Hello, and welcome to How to Define Your Scope of Practice and Market Your Clinic Services for Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine. My name is Jeremy Anderson Sloan. I'll be moderating this discussion today. And I'd like to welcome our panelists we have with us and ask each of them to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about your path before and after graduating to where you are now. And we'll start with Kathy.
Hi, everybody. So I am Kathy Harrington. I am a graduate of the master's program at University of Western States. I graduated in 2015 and started my own private clinical nutrition practice at the same time. I also teach for the University of Western States in their nutrition practice strategies course, helping students understand how to use motivational interviewing and cognitive behavioral therapy in clinical nutrition practice, as well as learning specific business strategies to launch a new business and market it and grow and all those things that you need to know in order to have a successful nutrition practice. I actually started in the natural healthcare field over 30 years ago. I can't believe I can say that now, but over 30 years ago, I started working in a chiropractic office while I was getting my degree in physical therapy. So I was doing like ultrasound and hot packs, and it just felt like a good fit. The hours were right for a college student. I had no idea how my life was going to change, being exposed to so many new ideas and principles of how the body has the ability to heal itself. And so that chiropractor had a huge impact on me. And I've just been a part of natural healthcare since then. There was a nutritionist that worked in his office, and she also had a huge impact on me. At one point, my daughter, who was just a year old, got sick, and after spending way too much money on conventional medicine and having it not worked, I called her and she just gave me an idea. It cost like $11 at the time, and it worked. So I was pretty much hooked from then, but it wasn't really till I had my own health struggle that I really realized, because I was really into fitness and exercise and nutrition, but I realized at that point that without the right nutrition, you really are not going to have the ability to heal. And I realized how important that was. I got my bachelor's in nutrition science. I worked counseling people through a lot of detox programs and did a lot of herbal recommendations. And my husband wanted to transition his practice from chiropractic into nutrition. And prior to meeting him, I had worked with the top business consultants for like 11 years. I'd always been working with a business consultant. And so I was giving him all these pointers, all these things to do to help him transition his practice into a holistic nutrition / functional medicine type practice. And he was also working with a business consultant at the time. And he kept saying, business consultant, you're so much better. What you're doing is working. This is great. You have such great ideas. And hearing that and just seeing my ability to help him grow a successful practice, I knew that I knew what I was doing, and I was going to be able to start my own private clinical nutrition practice, which is when I decided I should get my master's in nutrition. Before I did that, that's when I found the University of Western States and enrolled because of the amazing courses that they offer. I knew that those were the things people were dealing with. And as I said in the beginning in my introduction, once I graduated, I launched my own clinical nutrition practice and have been running it successfully now for the last 8 years.
Welcome, Kathy. Ashley?
Hello, I'm Ashley Koch. I am also a graduate of the UWS program. I graduated in 2021. I found the program. I was experiencing functional medicine for myself when I had health issues, and then my children had the chance to work with a functional medicine pediatrician, and they were suffering with chronic disease, and I really became inspired with the work that they were doing and how nutrition and functional medicine really resolved a lot of the issues that we were encountering. And my pediatrician inspired me and told me about University of Western States, and shortly after having my second child, I joined the program. And it was one of the best educations I could have dreamed of. I learned so much from the program, and I was able to apply it with my children and myself, and excited to now be in practice. as my education was coming to an end in one of my last semesters, I had an internship with a pediatrician who did functional medicine. And then I sort of was making connections with anyone who had graduated from UWS and trying to find out what I was going to do next. And that's how I met Megan through Bio Lounge. She was down the street from my house. She was practicing. She had graduated from UWS as well. And I reached out to her and met her and asked her for an internship. And she said yes. And I was one of her first interns. She took me on and gave me an opportunity. She showed me what she was doing. And then I joined her practice. And now I'm a functional medicine nutritionist at Bio Lounge, which has been amazing. So I've been practicing for a little over 2 years, seeing a lot of clients with chronic disease. So I see children all the way to adults in the aging population in all forms of chronic disease. And then I also run a clinical nutrition immersion program with Megan, where we get to work with master level nutritionists who are looking to learn how we're practicing, get all the tools, sharing what we're doing in our clinic, and helping others figure out how to apply it in their own private practices or wherever they choose to practice. So, and I'm coming from Portland, Oregon.
Great, welcome, Ashley. Meg?
Hi, I'm Meg Bowman. I wear 2 hats in my everyday life. I am one of the co-founders of Clinicians Incubator, which is an organization that supports CNS candidates in getting their hours and passing the test and launching a business or finding a job if they want to do that. I'm also one of the co-founders of Nutrition Hive, which is a national medical nutrition therapy and nutrition counseling practice that is staffed primarily by CNSs. And I didn't graduate from UWS. I graduated from MUAH. I hope you all will forgive me and allow me to be here anyway. Getting into this was, I think my story is very similar to a lot of people's. I got sick. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune. I read Liz Lipsky's book, Digestive Wellness, and 3 months later I was in school. So this was definitely a career change for me. It has been really fun. I think some of the things that I did initially to kind of position myself when I was still in school, I took a job at an office that had 2 chiropractors and a neurologist that were all practicing functionally. And that was an amazing introduction to this concept of how this goes. I also, when I graduated, because my specialty is mental health nutrition, I also started working in a IFM certified functional med psychiatrist's office. And that was also really interesting to me to kind of learn how that works. But honestly, within 6 months of working there, I had enough in my own private practice that I had to kind of say, I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of time to do these 2 things at the same time. So that is what I'm doing and what I did to get where I am. And I'm in the Chicago area.
Great, thank you, Meg. Megan?
Hi, I'm Megan Barnett. As Ashley mentioned, I work with Ashley. I'm a co-owner of Bio Lounge, which is a functional medicine clinic in Portland, Oregon. My path, like many people's paths, was instigated by illness. My first career was as a general contractor, and I worked primarily in the restoration of late 1800s, early 1900s houses. I probably just figured it out that might have been part of my health journey, like in the last couple of years, as I've seen more people with chronic illness. But I had a lot of exposure, and to that end, I was young, I was healthy, very healthy and resilient, and so I probably also didn't take very proper precautions. I had 2 tiny children in my very early 30s, and one of them started just vomiting randomly every time he ate very certain foods. And one of my friends who was a chiropractor said, have you considered that he might have a food sensitivity? And I was like, a what? Tell me more. And so I ended up being able to meet a lot of fantastic practitioners like everyone else, because I was trying to figure out what was going on with my kids. And then I was trying to figure out what was going on with my health. And I went down in the crash of 2008 with everyone else that was doing anything that had anything to do with houses and real estate, and decided to shift course. So I went back to school and did an undergraduate in dietetics, and learned through that process that I wanted to have a more holistic approach to nutrition. And so in lieu of doing my RD, I ended up going to University of Western States, and I was thrilled with the program. I had a great experience there and really enjoyed how deep we went into biochemistry and root cause. And in being a mom and being in school and getting sicker through the process, I had a total meltdown at the end of the program. I was very fortunate to have a doctor friend of mine invite me into his practice for the last 3 months to work with one of the teachers at UWS, actually. She was his functional medicine MD. And he said, well, why don't you just come shadow under her for 3 months? And as I was doing that, she was actually my doctor and diagnosing me with my autoimmune condition. And I had this incredible experience of seeing a functional medicine clinic function, and then meeting Jeff Grimm, who's a nurse practitioner who eventually became my business partner at BioLounge. But in doing the last term, my health did fail. We decided to move out of the country for a year, and took our kids and moved to Italy for the year. And then in doing that, I freaked out because then I didn't know what to do with my education. So I pivoted. And the thing about UWS, as we all know, if we've been in that program, is there's a focus on research and research writing. So I had a tool in my toolkit, and I ended up writing research-based blogs for functional medicine doctors in the States while I was overseas. And then I was hired to write books. So I wrote 6 books that year, and it was what probably was the primary catalyst into how I practice, because it allowed me to get paid to research. Not as a researcher, right? But I was reading other people's research. And so I got to dive really deeply into some pretty significant chronic diseases, and spend that time refining my understanding of the underlying causes. And so when I got back to Portland 5 years ago, I called up my good friend Jeff Grimm and said, hey, do you want a nutritionist to come work with you? And he welcomed me in. So that's been my path. And since then, I have just been working on building my practice and building BioLounge as a business, and serving the people in Portland with our really awesome team.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for being here with us today. Kind of jumping right in, my first question I'm going to ask Kathy. So can you tell us how you went about kind of defining your scope of practice, and then deciding on which services you would provide your clients?
So when I was a student there, I think it was, from what I remember or what I was aware of, really the first push to develop a niche and really target your marketing towards like one specific type of client that you were looking for. And so I spent a lot of time doing all the exercises, writing things down, trying to figure out what my niche would be. And I really wasn't able to figure that out. And I really just wanted to practice as a generalist. So I talked to a mentor about it, and they were like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Go for it. And so I did. I mean, I just went with how I felt. It was my gut feeling on the matter. But I know how difficult that decision can be, which is why I discuss it with students in the course at University of Western States, and help give some tools to students about how they can make that decision for themselves. And so in reading about this, discussing this for many years, I think the 2 biggest things to think about is, one, if you know that you know what you want to do as a niche, then go for it. A lot of people even start the program at University of Western States because they've already decided, I want to work with people with celiac. I want to work with women with PCOS. But for a lot of people, they don't know. And so a lot of it really has to do with the population base that's going to be available to you in practice. If you're going to open an in-person clinical nutrition practice in the town where you live, or in a specific geographical area, the population in that town is really going to play a factor, as is the other healthcare providers in that area. And so if there isn't a big population base, or if there, holistic medicine or functional medicine is not well known or very popular in that area, then specializing in functional medicine as a functional medicine nutritionist actually is enough of a specialty or enough of a niche practice. Whereas if you're already in a small town with a small population, and then you're only going to see people with PCOS, it's really going to limit your patient base that you're going to be able to see, versus if you're going to work online and you're going to have a national patient base, then you would probably need to specialize, because then you're really going to need to be specific with your marketing message and getting that out online in order to kind of cut through all the online noise and find your patients that way. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Kathy. Meg, same question for you.
Yeah. So I knew going into school that I was super interested in that mental health GI connection, because that was very much my experience. That's I was diagnosed with Crohn's, and that's what put me back into school. And so I really, when I came out of school, I was very crystal clear that that was exactly what I wanted to do. And that was all I wanted to do. And the first few years, I really didn't have the opportunity to say no. When, a client refers a family member with gout, I'm going to say yes. Of course, I'm going to say yes. I'm building a private practice. But I really did try to stay very close to my areas of interest. And it really did help me personally to do that, because it is my hyper focus. I love it. I could read it all day, research anything about mental health and GI. I'm super fascinated with it. And it helped keep me interested in it. So I did a ton of extra continuing education. I did a ton of extra training. I took a lot of, frankly, training that actually was designed for therapists, to be able to kind of expand my scope about what I provided in session. And not that I was providing therapy, but we can use a lot of those therapy tools to be very therapeutic in the nutrition world. And so I really did lean into doing that one thing. I think the thing that I will say is, like Kathy, we have a lot of people in our supervision program that really do appreciate more of that generalist approach, that are interested in seeing, more conditions than just one, or whatever comes their way, they're interested in it. And I always think that's wonderful. And I think, sometimes people feel a lot of pressure to really niche down and pick just one thing or just a few things. And it certainly isn't necessary. There's a lot of people, a lot of colleagues that I have that very much are generalists and really enjoy that work. That just wasn't my path.
Thank you, Meg. Now for both Megan and Ashley, since you kind of work closely together, and then Megan, I know you started with your business partner, Bio Lounge. Can you talk a little bit how you defined your scope and then how you brought in other practitioners?
I'll start and then hand it over to Ashley. One of the things, as Ashley said, we run a CNS program as well. And this is a conversation that constantly comes up. And I would second what Kathy and Meg said. In the beginning, it was like, who wants to see me? Right? Like, I work and I would like to, have a job. So I'm going to see whoever thinks they need help. And then I'll tell you if I can help you, sort of a thing. I'll say that for me in the beginning, because I went right into a practice that had just opened, the majority of my new clients were coming from a nurse practitioner, and they were coming from his scope of practice. And his scope of practice was focused on anti-aging, longevity, and primarily hormones. And anytime the patient left that kind of those silos, he was like, ooh, yeah, I don't want to do that. Let's do gut health over here. So by default, I ended up having a lot of very complicated clients that took a lot of time and a lot of investigation. And that's where my practice went. It's because I think I wanted to solve the mysteries, probably. I found that interesting. But because those were the first type of clients I worked with, then they told that to other people that were having similar issues. And in our world, at least, we're very referral based. So the people we see tend to tell other people that are suffering similar things. And so it naturally grew that way. I will say, though, that I knew at the very beginning there were certain conditions I was not working with. And I have a hard no on them, and that's eating disorders. And then I don't work with people that have advanced cancer at all. Very early stage, if I can collaborate care with their whole team. And that's my comfort zone. Pretty much everything else is fair game. And I'll tell you that when I met Ashley and she started working with us, she and I think really similarly, and she was interested in really similar things, but her practice expands past mine in that she has a much greater knowledge base in pediatrics. So for me, bringing her into the practice, it was a huge benefit that we could then serve that population with more expertise than I was able to give them.
Thank you. Ashley?
Oh, you're muted.
Lovely. Sorry about that. To add on to that, when I was in school, I was pretty sure I was going to do pediatrics, and that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with kids and family. And when I met Megan, it was great to come into her practice because that wasn't the population that was primarily there. So I started really getting to interact with a much wider population. And what was great about that, just getting out there and practicing, was that I realized that I loved working with a larger population, and I didn't have to be that focused. And I can learn something from all of those, times in life that can be applied to each of those situations. And so I think for me, figuring out my scope has been just practicing and figuring out what you like. And I have discovered some of the things I don't like. So I'm starting to set boundaries around what I don't want to do. And I think since I am in my third year of practice, it's still really early. So I still get to discover, and I'm still finding things that I don't enjoy. And I'm finding a lot of things I enjoy. And I'm also glad that I've opened up this idea that I don't just have to do kids, and I get to work with adults as well. So, and teens. I really enjoy the teen population. So I think it's getting out there and practicing and seeing what you love and what you're good at, and figuring out what you don't want to deal with.
Thank you all. So are there any resources that you might recommend to current students or new grads to kind of help them in this process? Ashley, we can start with you.
Yeah, so I think my best advice, I was actually meeting with a student today, is make connections. I think that has been really powerful for me. So, the UWS program is an online program and we're not in person, but there's so many ways you can make connections. And one of the things that myself and Megan are really passionate about is offering chances to meet with students and having informational interviews, because we really want to answer questions and help other people find that path. And so reaching out to anyone that looks like they're doing something interesting, that's, something you're passionate about, and make connections and ask for an informational interview and ask the questions that you're unsure about and make real connections, like have a Zoom call, have a phone call. And I did a lot of that when I was in the program, and I had a lot of mentors that were sort of guiding me, or students that were a little further ahead of me or had just graduated and gave me hope about the future and what's to come, and hearing what they're doing. So I think that's really been powerful for me. And then I think, graduates these days have tools like LinkedIn, which has been even more powerful to actually make connections versus when I was in school, LinkedIn wasn't as active and available as a tool. So take advantage and really see who you can connect with. That would be the best resource I can suggest.
Thank you, Ashley. Megan?
I would definitely second what Ashley said, and that was probably from a resource perspective, if I look back retrospectively, the most powerful resource was talking to people, connecting with people within my community, or, kind of doing the sphere thing, right? Where you're like, I don't know a person that does that, but that person knows a person that does that. And being fairly relentless about reaching out. One of the things I can say about Ashley is she was relentless, and I was not ignoring her because I was trying to ignore her. I just, had 2 kids and was running a business and, was busy. So it took a few times for her reaching out to me saying like, no, really, you're going to like me. We're going to do this, and before I responded, and it was the best decision to respond and build that relationship. But also thinking about, who are the people I know that would be excited about what I'm doing? who are the people I know that would be supportive? And when you're still in school, especially, and you don't necessarily have to be in practice yet, one of the things that I did was a lot of free work for people, and I would write for people, or I would chart for people, or whatever, when I was doing my internship. And I think that if you can offer them something for their time, because people are busy, and grow a relationship before you even graduate, that's helpful. It also gives other providers or other people that you're trying to make those connections with some insight into what you know and your skill set and what you have to offer them. So network, 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 network. Would be my
I'm
best.
sensing a theme here.
Yeah.
Meg?
Yeah, I don't think I can say that network piece any better than Ashley and Megan. I'm going to go a different direction just for a little bit of variety. So I frequently will recommend, especially if you're wanting to start your own private practice, SCORE, SCORE, is a service that is completely free. It's part of the Small Business Administration. And they will do literally business counseling and coaching for free. And these are people that have, generally speaking, run businesses. They are retired, and they are volunteering their time to help coach new practitioners, new businesses. That is a fantastic resource to use. They frequently offer sessions out of public libraries, so that is also a great place to kind of go and see what resources are there. And then I would also say, especially if you're doing a local private practice, showing up, as much as it sometimes pains those of us that are introverts, showing up at some networking events at the Chamber of Commerce, that really does make a difference. You can get introduced to people, and frequently the chambers have a health specific networking meeting that might feel a little bit more comfortable than going into a mixed group. But you can always reach out to the chamber directly before going to those meetings to get a little bit of a more warm welcome if it feels a little scary.
Thank you. Kathy?
So I want to also piggyback on what Megan was saying. I have noticed and talked with students, and students, especially if they don't already have a background in healthcare, students who work in other practices, whether it be a holistic healthcare, chiropractic, or functional medicine, being like the back office person, a patient liaison, or even as the front desk person, is actually a really great idea, a great way to see what it's like, what the flow of a practice is like, see what it is like to have different patient base with different, people with different health concerns coming in, and also a great way to start making connections in your community with people that you may want to work with as a functional medicine nutritionist in the future. There is a great article that I have gotten a lot of good feedback from students that they've enjoyed reading. It is in Counseling Today. And the name of the article is Specialist, Generalist, or Niche Provider. And it's a compilation of a lot of different practitioners just sharing their personal experiences and stories with all three of those, whether they're going to specialize, have a niche, or be a generalist. There's a new book out. It's kind of in the title telling you it's the bias of the book. The title of the book is Range, Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. And that's by David Epstein. And so, from the title, we can see where that's going. But I think if you are new, as Ashley was saying, just starting out, seeing a variety of different people is a great way to start to get an idea of what type of population you like to work with and which ones maybe you don't want to work with in the future.
And thank you all. So next question is for Meg. So once you kind of determined in your practice and you're ready to see clients, how did you go about marketing your services, and what tools did you use?
Yeah, great question. So I will say, I'll tell you what worked, and then I'll tell you my favorite. Actually, I'll tell you my favorite first. My favorite was trading services. Did you know you can do that? I didn't know that when I got into this, and it is the most fun. You can trade services with a massage therapist. You can trade services with an acupuncturist. I traded services with a lot of different providers. It was great. I felt great. And the benefit to you really in that circumstance is that for sure you receive the service, that's amazing. But the other person also really knows you, they know how you work, and they're better able to tell other people. And I was happy to do that, frankly, because I wanted a little free massage and acupuncture. But it really did also work for me because some of those people continue to be really good referral partners. I would say that the number one strategy, if you go and look at I've had a couple private practices, but if you look at the one still out of school, you will see I maybe did 4 social media posts the entire time that I was in that private practice. And I never really invested in social media. It just didn't work for me. That's not how I thought. What I invested in was making relationships with other providers. And to this day, there are other, mostly therapists because mental health specialty, that refer 4 to 5 clients a month, every month. And I don't therefore have to do a lot of external marketing because of that. And they also, those providers, provide me a lot of opportunities to speak to groups. I actually earlier today did a hour-and-a-half CE to a group that is run by one of those referral partners that I have. So really investing the time in relationships, in understanding how other people work, in trying to, when appropriate, send referrals to them, thank them for referrals they send to you. That has been certainly a cornerstone of how I've grown my practice.
Thank you. Ashley, same question for you.
Yeah, I'd say I'm echoing some of that. The referrals are really powerful. So for me right now, I work under a practice that's really responsible for bringing a lot of clients my way. So that's really nice. So thinking about whether you want to spend a lot of your energy doing that or if that's your skill set. But then feeling like a lot of what is coming my way is also through referrals. So thinking through your relationships and the connections you have, and then educating them on what you're doing. Megan and I often talk about not a lot of people understand what a functional nutritionist is and what we do. And sometimes it's really about education. And so one of my greatest referrals happens to be a childhood friend who has a really successful OBGYN practice in Alaska. And she wanted to learn what I was doing and offered her opportunities to become educated on some of the work we're doing around hormones with women. And she learned it from us. And then she got really excited about it. And now she sends all of her clients our way to work through some of the symptoms they're having. And so just thinking about some of the existing relationships you have or connections you can make in your community and providing education on what it is you actually do. And then if enough people really start to buy into what you're doing, they're going to send people your way. And so back to the connections and relationships.
Thank you. Kathy?
So starting out in practice as a generalist, what I did for marketing is I would pick a health concern that I thought I might want to work with, and I would do a health lecture about it. So I would do a health lecture focused on autoimmune disease or cardiovascular disease or gastrointestinal issues. And I would do one of those at a time. So if I was marketing and doing a health lecture on autoimmune, then I would run ads and I would take out a full page ad in the Natural Awakenings to advertise my health lecture. And at the time I was giving free health lectures in person. And that was one of the best things that I've done to bring clients into my practice, get the word out. When you're speaking, when you offer a free health lecture, whether it be in person or a webinar, people get to know you. They have a level of trust in you already from hearing you speak. And so when they come in as clients, they're awesome clients because they already have that level of trust. And the other thing that I did that really helped me grow my business is BNI in my area. It's an international organization, but it's a networking group, and it is a great opportunity. And I have met chiropractors through that, massage therapists, other health providers. And that's all I'll say about that. But that is a great local networking opportunity for people who do want to be in person in their community, meeting other business owners and people who know other people in your community. That is what I have learned from BNI is you never know who someone else knows. So every person you meet, you're not only getting the opportunity to meet that person, but you're also potentially getting the opportunity to meet everybody else they know. And so if you just, every opportunity, every networking event, every time you meet someone, if you just approach it that way, very open, warm, and just begin developing that relationship with that person, you just never know where it's going to go. When you look back and you see how it all worked out, it's actually pretty cool and amazing.
Thank you. Megan?
So echoing what all three of these ladies have said, you know, that the networking and connecting is key here. But how you do that is probably going to be largely based on your personality type. And as Ashley said, I think one of the challenges, especially coming out of the UWS program, is we are armed and dangerous. We are ready. Like, we're like, I know science and I know how to help you and I'm going to be able to help you get better. And then you're like, I'm a functional nutritionist. And they go, a what? And no one knows what that is, right? No one has this is not like an endocrinologist. This is, I'm a functional nutritionist. And so I wouldn't lead with that. I just wouldn't lead with that, right? So, or you can say I work in functional medicine. What's functional medicine? At least they understand that, you know, a little bit. But what I would say is be shameless about talking about what you do, but don't do it in that way where, so every connection, right? So every time you have an opportunity to talk with someone, people like to talk about their issues, their kids' issues, their this issues, right? I had an approach in those social settings of saying like, oh, that's funny. I just read a study that said blah, 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 blah. I wonder if that might be interesting to you. And then all of a sudden they make this connection like, she reads science. And it starts to build your reputation. And that's just your casual marketing. That's just your everyday at the grocery store marketing, which actually works. It actually does work. And then the second thing is, if you have the personality where you're comfortable up in front of people, take every opportunity to do the lectures, to do the conferences, to speak. And I did a lot of calling around. And when I came into Jeff's clinic, I was not an employee. I had no guaranteed money coming into my pocket. I was a contractor at that time. And so I had to just, you know, eat what I killed. And so I called the local gyms. And I called the local dentists, and I called the local chiropractors and acupuncturists that had full clinics. And I said, hey, do you think your staff would be interested in a free lecture on blah, blah, blah? And if they want my services, I'll give them 50% off. And so I would go in and speak to them at their lunch hour, their coffee hour. And then Orange Theory was a gym that is franchised, so local owners. So they invited me in to give discounts to their members. And I would just go in and repetitiously do talks on different issues that they found, you know, certain people would find interesting. So I gave away a lot of my services. I gave away, I discounted myself at the beginning quite a bit to start building up a fan base, right? Because when you get to a certain threshold, you're a referral-based business, and you don't have to be boots on the ground anymore, and you don't have to spend a lot of money marketing, but that's a threshold and it takes some time to get to. And I think it takes realistically a couple of years, really, in my experience.
Thank you, Megan. You went right into my next question. I'm going to stay with you. So we've been talking a lot about referrals and how working with other practitioners really helps set you up for success in your business. Can you talk about any creative tips or philosophies that you might have when you're growing your business from referrals?
So two things I would say. I was probably thinking a little bit outside of the box with regards to the people that might want to refer to me. And so I think I contacted everybody I thought might see a person that would be a good patient for me. So things I was thinking about were a cash-based clinic. So I was interested in talking to cash-based providers, cash-based services, because it's a really hard gap to bridge when you're coming from an insurance model, coming to a cash-based practice. It's easier to go the other direction. So I was reaching out to other providers. I reached out to all of my providers. So the great thing is if you're sick and then you go into a program to figure out how to not be sick anymore, you actually have 20 doctors you've probably talked to through your experience. I talked to all of them as well. So this is what I'm doing now. These are the services. But on top of that, one of the things that I admittedly would say is a little manipulative, but really effective, is every patient that came in that had a provider team they were working with, that I knew they were going to keep working with, I reached out to those providers. And so whether that was an OBGYN or that was a chiropractor or that was, an endocrinologist, it was really anybody. And sometimes they never call you back, but I would leave a message and say, I've sent over the chart notes. I just want to make sure you're okay with the plan that I put together, because they're the physician that's in charge of care. And 9 times out of 10, I got on a call with them, and then I got to introduce who I am and what I do. And then I was in their mind. So I've had referrals from doctors I've never, ever, ever met because someone else in their practice has seen me. So I think that you just can't leave anything on the table at the beginning when people don't know who you are, what your title is, what you do. You have to just be constantly educating people about the resource you are.
Thank you. Meg, same question for you.
Yeah, I think Megan's advice to think a little bit outside the box is a really smart one. So I'm not going to give my example. My example is easy. I'm mental health nutrition primarily. I go to therapists. This is very easy. But when I coach CNS candidates, I really try and help them think through where their clients are, if not in their office. So as an example, if you want to specialize in pregnancy, postpartum, early pediatrics, you might contact a realtor who specializes in selling to new families. Those exist, absolutely. If you want to specialize in fertility, you know what? There's acupuncturists that absolutely specialize in that. And you better be talking to the doulas and the midwives and the et cetera. If you want to specialize in perimenopause and menopause, you'd be surprised how many services people in that age range also participate in. You're going to want to be talking to CPAs and financial planners. You're going to be talking at that age group to college planners for those people's kids. You're going to want to be talking to, realtors again that kind of sell the empty nesters. So think outside the box about condition specific and really try and understand where those individuals are, if not looking for nutrition. And I think that is also a great way to move forward with a referral network.
Thank you, Meg. Ashley?
So I would say one of my creative tips would be remember the people that are in front of you, your clients that you have interacted with. And I would echo everything everyone else has said because they've been incredibly useful as well. I think the clients can sometimes become your best referral source. And then starting to pay attention to who continually is sending people your way and really protecting that relationship. So maybe your work with them has sort of hit the end point and they're doing better, and that's amazing. But sometimes reaching out to that client, just thinking of you, checking in to see how you're doing, because they have sent your referrals your way and you want to stay top of mind for them. Also, you've helped them feel better. And so it's most likely someone else they're going to encounter. Women in our 30s and 40s, we're always talking about our health and sharing it with each other. And so they're going to be thinking of you in those conversations. And so thinking about where those referrals came from and what's happening with those relationships and keeping those connections going. And then I think also sometimes the community around you, you're forgetting about them. And so what is the conversation happening in that community? So encountering someone who's helping their family and friends that are struggling with things like metabolic disease, and they're trying to get more of those clients in their door. So talking about maybe you offer a free course for that community where you really talk about how your work is going to support them. And then they're going to realize, oh, you're doing that work and want to walk in your door. So really thinking about what are the issues impacting these communities that you're trying to access and offering ways for them to learn more about it so that they want to keep learning from you.
Thank you, Ashley. Kathy?
So one thing that I did, because I was just so busy, just like I said, giving health lectures, bringing clients into my business and into my practice. And then when I was working with people one-on-one, if I would hear about an acupuncturist they liked or had good results after working with them, or a mental health professional, or their primary care physician, especially if they manage their case well, which unfortunately in my area is rare, and the types of labs that primary care practitioner ordered. And so when I was impressed with that practitioner, I kept a folder of resources, and I would just jot that practitioner's name down. And over time, I started to notice a theme with one primary care practitioner in my area, an integrative medical doctor. And so then after that, a lot of times whenever someone asked me if I knew of a good doctor that I would recommend, I would just send them to him. And so what happened, and what does happen, is that the more the other practitioner hears your name, the more people you send them, the more your name is in front of them, in front of them, in front of them. And then they see how you're managing their patient's case, and they like it. And then I've gotten a lot of good feedback coming back from my clients, coming back and saying, oh, Dr. So-and-so, he said, just keep doing what Kathy's saying. I had a gastroenterologist tell my client, just keep doing what that nutritionist is saying. She's the only one that's been able to help you. And so that type of thing is that's basically how it's happened for me, is almost more organically. It's just getting out there and having other practitioners hear my name from my clients. And I just, like I said, after sending so many people to this one integrative medical doctor, I have also gotten referrals back from him. And so it has worked out really well to just follow that process for me.
Okay, well, thank you all. We're running a little bit short on time, so I'm going to ask kind of a final question for each of you. What is something that you wish that you knew when you graduated that would help you define your practice and help you kind of set yourself up to be successful and get your name out in the community? I'm going to start with Meg.
Yes, one thing I wish I knew, that you don't have to do everything like anybody else. You need to find your own path. I tried to be everything to everybody. I tried to have all the hours open for whenever somebody would want to come. I tried to go to every single event, and it really spread me thin, because as an introvert, I don't enjoy a lot of those big networking events. That's really challenging, but I made myself do it. But you know what? Because I made myself do it because I thought that's what I should do, because that's what I was hearing from everybody else. And I think the thing that I really wish I would have known is I wish I would have trusted my own instincts more, and trusted where my comfort was, and thought about, how could I do this thing? How could I market in such a way that worked, but more importantly, worked for me? And that's where I really flipped from doing a ton of those kind of networking large group events into more of a one-on-one referral process, because that was easier on me. And so that's what I would say, is just find something that works for you and go with it, and don't worry so much about what everybody else is doing. That's their jam. You find yours.
Thank you, Meg. Ashley?
I would say remembering energy is energy. So I spent far too much time while I was in school and afterwards thinking I needed to be on social media in a way that I didn't enjoy. And so for some people, they enjoy it. It's great for them. It wasn't great for me. I was spending far too much time watching what everyone's doing, trying to get clarity on what I should be doing. And when I turned it off, it became a lot more clear. Instead of focusing on like trying to keep up with every direction everyone else is going in, I realized I had a lot of knowledge within me, and I didn't need everybody else's protocols and ideas about how to do functional medicine, because I had a great education and I knew what I needed to do with clients. And so sometimes turning off the noise for a little bit and focusing and listening to yourself. I've wasted far too much time worrying about other people and what they're doing. And now without that, I really feel like I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I know why I practice and how I practice and what's unique about that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ashley. Megan?
I think I just have to speak to how much we actually do know coming out of this program. And I think I wish, looking back, that I would have realized that I'm not an imposter. I have something to add. I don't have those insecurities now, but the first couple of years, it's really hard to work in this field because we're disruptors. We are disrupting conventional medicine. So you're going to have conflict and you're going to have people that disagree with you, especially when you have clients that have medical teams. So I would just say, know that you know a lot, know that you'll keep knowing more. That's the way this goes. There's no way around that. And, I think both, Meg, Ashley, and I all offer programs. The reason we offer those is because we know that time after you finish school is like, oh, I need a plan, I need a protocol, right? And so if you have that type of a personality where you really feel like, no, I just need to know that in this situation, I do this, in this situation, then you may have to invest in some additional support after school, right? To really feel confident in your practice. But I think going back to, even in the absence of that, just know you know a lot and you're going to do great and help a lot of people.
Thank you, Megan. Kathy?
Yeah, I like that. I encourage students with that too, is having that confidence. When you graduate, you really do know so much. And it's really when you get in front of people and they ask you a question and you just know, and just start with this such valuable information as you really learn how much you do have to offer. I was thinking personally, the one thing I wish I knew starting out, honestly, is what marketing would not bring me a return on investment. But honestly, sometimes you just don't know that until you try it, right? I appreciate what Ashley said, and I think Meg too, about social media. It really does not bring most people a return on investment. So I'm glad to hear other practitioners admitting that and saying that. But what I recommend is that you track your marketing to see, as people come in, I always ask everyone, how did they hear about me? And I track it so that you do know if your marketing efforts are actually the ones that are working and bringing people in. And after a little trial and error with some different marketing investments or opportunities, you start to learn which ones are really working, and then you can really target your efforts there. And then, as Megan said, eventually you will have a word of mouth referral-based practice. I think just having the confidence that it's going to happen is really what I wish every student would just have, that when they get started.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all again for being with us today.